Howdy folks, Nathan here with a holiday question for you. You want to save $11,000 or is $11,000 enough to buy what you really want? Now, the vehicle in question is directly behind me, and that is the brand new Mazda CX-50. And the CX-50 sits right in between the CX-5, which they're still building, and of course, the brand new CX-90. So it's their medium-sized crossover that competes against the RAV4, the CR-V, the Nissan Rogue, etc., etc. It's a huge segment, and this is a very important vehicle for Mazda. But the vehicles behind me have different powertrains and very, very different prices and different trims. So the question is, which one is worth your while? And that's what we're going to find out. This is a 2.5 liter Turbo Premium Plus, and that one over there, well, that one is just known as an S Preferred. First of all, it's pretty obvious that this one's got more goodies on it because it has this shiny plastic little thing here that does absolutely nothing, but it looks kind of off-roady. And that's because the CX-50 is sort of their off-roady version of crossovers that they build. Now, I can attest to the fact that the all-wheel drive systems in Mazdas that are currently being used are really good in rough terrain. Maybe even the best for vehicles in this class. However, with less than 8.5 inches of ground clearance, you're not really off-roading. But let's talk about the differences between the two of them, because notice any fog lights or anything like that that make them different? Not really there. In fact, they're very similar in the front other than the little fake little skid plate there. Okay, but this is where you can tell the difference. Wheel size, baby. Those are 20-inch, those are 17-inch. And that actually makes a little bit of difference in terms of performance. And that's because these things are over 9 inches wide, these Goodyears, and these are about 7 inches wide. Yeah, so more contact patch for a vehicle that's got a lot more horsepower means that you go around the corner, it's going to stick a little bit better. Although, interestingly, these are much heavier wheels. You have more rolling mass here. But with this turbocharged engine making so much more power than this, it really doesn't seem to care. Let's work our way towards the back. Now, another thing is that this trim is going to give you very few color choices, whereas in this one you have more. And this is a very pretty red, I gotta say. But if you look in terms of the way the wheel fits inside the wheel well, this certainly looks a lot more premium than this. Look at that. See what I mean? Okay, let's move to the back though, because there's one more thing you could see. I want to see if you can, yeah. So, even though this doesn't have the chromed exhaust tips, it has dual exhaust tips. So the big difference is, yes, these are not chromed, and also this. Let me show you what I'm talking about over here. Oh yeah, larger exhaust tips, because you have more power, and because you pay a lot more money. And then you've got this also, which matches the front. Actually, I give it up to Mazda because I really do like their design. I'll be completely honest with you about that. And one final thing, you have the most important part. Carefully, carefully. Turbo! Yeah! Without that badge, nah. Who cares, right? No, I'm kidding. Anyway, it does make a big difference because the exterior design of this looks a little bit more premium, which probably helps because it's a lot more money. What you're looking at here is the base model engine. Now remember when I was talking about the CX-5? Well, basically they have the same powertrains as these two vehicles, just so you know. It's just that this is a little bit bigger physically. Okay, this is a 187 horsepower 4-cylinder engine that makes 186 pound-feet of torque. Not turbocharged, but it is a Skyactiv G. It's hooked up to a 6-speed automatic transmission, and this has all-wheel drive, so power goes to all 4 wheels. And the all-wheel drive system we will get to in a minute because they're very similar between the two vehicles. Obviously, when you have a lot more power, which the other one does, it's going to make a big difference in terms of how that power gets to the wheels when you have low traction situations. But here's an important part. This is a much more efficient powertrain because this gets 27 mpg combined. So that's 23 or 24 highway, depending on how this one is equipped, and 30 mpg highway. keep that in mind because we're about to move on to a vehicle that is not as efficient.
They both have push button start, and I shall push the button and make the start. Yeah, it's not quite as loud as the other one, but whatever. It's kind of interesting. I expect less sound deadening in the less expensive model, you know what I mean? Okay, one thing I can tell you right off the bat, and I do have experience with this in the CX-5, which they are related, and that is with the smaller wheel, in this case 17-inch wheel, and more rubber, you actually get a better ride even on dirt surfaces like this. So with the bigger 20-inch wheel, there's a lot more steel there and there's a lot less give. So if you want a less sporty ride, so to speak, or a lot more comfortable ride, that would be another reason why I would consider a vehicle like this. And this happens almost with every automaker, that you have the smaller wheel and more beefy tire with the less expensive version. So that's kind of compelling, right? That's one way to look at it. Don't worry about the sounds that you're hearing, by the way. If you hear this little clunk, 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 that is actually the dirt and rocks being flung off the tires, being shot up to the other side of the vehicle. And that is something that happens in Colorado all the time. I like to call it Colorado rhythm. Okay, I'm trying to be funny. All right, so let's go into this thing. Let's try it first. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, one thing you have to do with it, if you want it to move at all, you really do have to kick it. You have to accelerate. Skyactiv engines have proven to be very reliable. The non-turbo ones have a very good track record for reliability. Now, I am biased about Mazdas in terms of the reliability and the amount of driving joy they provide in general. I've owned 5 Mazdas in my lifetime, 5. Let's see how this thing does from a standstill. And I can guarantee you it's not going to be great because not a ton of horsepower, 187, and then we're at high elevation, right? So just from a standstill, I'm not putting it in sport, but away we go. It revs high. Mazdas do like to rev pretty high. There we go. Yeah, not fast, but if you compare it to, let's say, a naturally or normally aspirated Toyota RAV4, I would say they're in the same wheelhouse. This, however, does something that car doesn't do, even with these tires. And the cameraman's going to have to hold on. Excellent handling around corners. One reason why I'm a bit of a Mazda fanboy is the fact that a majority of their vehicles handle extremely well, even their base models. I think that the overall comfort, ride, and handling in this much less expensive model is excellent. The question is, with all that extra power and just grit of the turbo, is it worth that extra $10,000 or $11,000?
Yes, that is another 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine, but that's a Skyactiv G turbo. Yeah, big old turbocharger. It's hanging back there, we think, and fills up a lot of space. But the big difference really is in performance. So what we're talking about here is a vehicle that produces, when it's filled with premium fuel, 256 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque. But if you run it on regular fuel, you'll get 227 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. Still considerably more, but you lose out on gas mileage, and that's because combined this gets 25 mpg. So 23 city, 29 highway. Producer Zach's been driving this one, and according to him, it's been nowhere near what the EPA says it is. No surprise. Now, has a 6-speed automatic transmission, yes, just like that one, and it has an all-wheel drive system, yes, just like that one. So they're very similarly equipped, with the exception of the heart of the beast, because this is a far more powerful engine. But is it worth $11,000 more?
I am going to start the car. Once again, push button, no difference there. One thing I should mention right off the bat, a lot of the same equipment, but there are things that this has that doesn't. And heads-up display is one of them. It's a pretty small heads-up display. I kind of miss the days when Mazda had this cool little plastic panel that would come up and that would beam the information to you. That was their own solution. Right now, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm already feeling a lot more of the dirt road we're on than I did before. Why is that? Well, because I have 20-inch, very large wheels, which means very little rubber, just a little bit of rubber. So they're not as forgiving, but they are wider. The tire, the patch that's on the ground is much wider. Also, it's a sportier tire, to be honest with you. So, yeah, going around corners in this will probably be a lot more fun than the other one, but the other one already handled brilliantly. Once again, I'm not in sport mode, I'm in regular mode, normal mode. Gonna give it a little bit of juice. Very different type of acceleration feel. Cameraman, hold on, and away we go. A little bit of lag, and there it goes. Woo! Yeah, it's not like getting slugged in the chest. It's not like that. But it most definitely is a lot more power. The passing power in this thing is extremely good. Now, let's put it at the same corner. I'm gonna go about the same speed. I'm gonna hold on, camera dude. Here we go. Same corner. Yeah. You can feel that the grip is a little bit different. Once again, well planted, but in this case, because of the wider tire and more aggressive tire and a much more solid feel around that corner, it certainly feels sportier. If I was in sport mode, you would definitely have a quicker launch and you would have probably a little bit more of a feel in the seat of your pants of this thing being sportier. But yeah, it's remarkably fun. This car with the turbo wakes it up and makes it into something that is uncanny with how much fun it is. However, at the end of the day, you're transporting people in this. This is a vehicle to get you from point A to point B.
Okay, we are in the S Preferred. So that means that it's a step above the base model. But for that, you still get a majority of the same controls that are on the steering wheel. And you also get many of the same controls right here. Very similar to BMW iDrive. This screen is actually pretty cool because the other things here that are on the right and the left, well, those are analog, but this is digital in the center. I really do like that. I like that you have a little bit of choice here and a little bit of a mixture of the new and old. So that works out really well. Now, there are a few different drive modes, and you may have thought that this was where you're going to be selecting a drive mode, but you'd be wrong. It's actually right here, MI Drive. So there's Sport, there's Normal, and there's Off-Road. Now, one thing that this doesn't have is a tow mode. This vehicle, in its current, with the engine and transmission and everything else, doesn't tow as much as the other one. Big surprise. 2,000 pounds maximum towing for this if you get the tow package. That one tows up to 3,500 pounds. But for the most part, they do have the same settings. Both vehicles have a predictive all-wheel drive system. Simply put, that allows this vehicle to take into account everything from the outside temperature, whether or not it's detecting any type of slippage, also the mode that it's in, and the driver input. Even if you have the windshield wipers on, it takes all that into account, and then it says to itself, okay, I'm going to limit this much slip, or I'm going to allow this much slip because I know that you're doing off-roading or you're going to be in inclement weather or bad terrain. It takes all of that into account immediately. The Mazda all-wheel drive system, even on the base model, is one of the better ones that's out there for you. Big difference between getting into this car and that car, and that's because in this more premium vehicle, it certainly feels that way when you look at the interior accoutrement, because you have this stitching going across, and that's actual leather, I believe. The seats are made out of a very similar material. Now, the base model, or the previous model, that one has a mixture of a fake leather and cloth, and to be honest with you, at least with my big booty, I feel more comfortable in the lesser vehicle. It's just, it seems like it stretches a little bit more and encompasses my oversized behind and back. However, the rest of this is very similar. You'll notice everything's laid out. By the way, Mazda does a genius job with real buttons, real dials, very good feedback with all the buttons. You obviously get more options when it comes to the heated seats and the heated steering wheel as well, as opposed to just having heated seats. You have cooled seats as well, or ventilated seats. Steering wheel is also covered in leather, and you have the paddle shifters, but it's still a 6-speed automatic transmission. And all of the components around here are pretty much the same. The thing is, fire this puppy up here and make sure the music is on low so we don't get sued, and it's going to still make that noise for another half an hour, and it's going to still go, and it's done. Okay, big difference here. For one thing, engine's louder a little tiny bit, go figure. And then of course this screen, which comes standard with the 10.25 inch screen here, and then this little tiny screen up here is the same. But then you go into the drive modes. You got sport, normal, and off-road, just like the other one. Same graphics, so you're not paying for anything more there. The premium price on some of these kind of makes sense until you sit in one of the lower end models of the exact same car and realize, oh wait, I can get that in this lesser model. So you do get the premium sound system. You do get this very large panoramic sunroof, pulls all the way back, but this opening is actually really small here. But I wanted to point out the camera system too, because you do get that in this vehicle. But before you start pushing on the screen and getting your fingerprints all over the place, yeah, it's not a touch screen. You have to use this in order to control it. Basically, the back seats are the same size. And one of the reasons why they built this over the CX-5, because this is bigger. Also, door opening is pretty wide, which is a good thing for a fat guy like me. Okay, let's sit in the back. Now, I'm 6'1", so this seat is almost as far back as it goes. I sit behind myself. Now, I have size 13 shoes, or boots, and they fit under this seat great. That's important because the legroom is a little bit on the tight side. There's still enough room for me, but I do have to definitely sit a little bit more erect, one of my favorite words. And in terms of stuff back here, well, I have back seat heating. Look at that, that's great. And then I have USB. There's no USB-C here. Mazda's always a little bit behind when it comes to some tech stuff. Go ahead and ask some fans about what they do with in the past with Apple, and yeah. Anyway, so you have the armrest over here, which turns into a cup holder, and the seat comfort back here isn't too bad. Headroom is okay. I would imagine that Roman, who is a little taller than me, would fit back here, and his hair would just graze the top. And that's with this sunroof. I don't know if the roof is shaped any differently, to be honest with you, from the regular model, but there's still enough headroom back here and enough width to put 3 people back here. As long as they're not as huge as I am, they would fit fairly comfortably. So I am more comfortable in the back of this than I am with the Mazda CX-5. Now, speaking of that, we have a wonderful video. Go to alltfl.com and you will see Tommy versus Case with the CX-5 versus the CX-50. Now, I think probably in the next couple of years, they're going to phase out the CX-5, and this will take over for it. Here's one thing that they have in common. Cargo space, baby. And that's because they're identical inside when it comes to cargo space. But I wanted to use this one to show you a couple things, because this has all the extra goodies. That's including this little rubber thing, which is extra accoutrement. Yes, we don't need that. So, they both have, and I'm happy to tell you, woohoo, a donut and extra cargo underneath here. Why is that important? Because not many crossovers in this class actually even give you a spare tire. There it goes. Woohoo! It's almost flat in here. Almost. There's a little bit of a gap here. It's not too bad. And this does go up just a hair. The thing is that even though this is bigger than the CX-5 by just a little bit, it's still not best in class. As a matter of fact, it's near the bottom in terms of cargo space. So the RAV4, the CR-V, yeah, they have more space. But this does have a little bit more space than the Nissan Rogue, which is surprising because I think the Rogue is actually easier to get in and out of. I have the sticker for this one. However, I do have all the pricing for this one. So let's start with the 2.5S Preferred. Now that has a price of $33,620. And for that money, you get everything you see here, including the all-wheel drive, with the exception of the bumped up upgrade with the screen and whatnot. So there are a couple packages that you can get. So assuming that you have a few packages, we're gonna bring it in at, say, $35,000 for that. Pretty good deal. This, fully loaded, And this is a Mazda CX-50 with the Premium Plus package, and it has the Soul Red Crystal Metallic and all that other stuff. Comes in at $45,270, basically a $10,000 difference between the two of them. Is it worth it? Ooh, that's a hell of a question. This is a lot more fun, obviously. Turbocharged car, way more horsepower, gonna be more fun. Handles, better. Fatter tires, makes sense. This gets better mileage. This is a lot less expensive. This will be easier to insure. This tows more. That is a hard thing to haggle with, but I gotta be honest with you. I am somebody who likes getting a deal. I do not like spending $10,000 more for a vehicle. However, now bear in mind, you can get this for less. This is the top of the line. You can get one that's not quite as well equipped and save yourself a couple grand and still get that turbocharged engine, which I'd probably recommend. However, my money, if I was driving every day, I would sacrifice some fun. I'm married, I know what it's like. And I would get this. Why? Because $10,000 is just too much for me to spend, and 11 is way too much for me to spend. I'm curious to what you guys would do. So let me know in the comments below. For the Fastline Car and all of our other channels, this is Nathan, and I'll see you next time.